What is up, Pats Nation? It is Patriots Global back here with another video. And before we jump into things, I just want to let you guys know that each of the guys that I'm going to be talking about, I have made individual videos about, in-depth videos about them, what they're good at, what their weaknesses are, a little bit more about them. So if there's a player that you specifically want to know more about, go check out my channel for them. Just a heads up, the only players I have not done a draft video on yet are Byron Coward and Webster. But every other guy I have made a draft video on. So if this guy interests you and you really want to know more about him, his playstyle, go check out that video. But without further ado, let's hop into me grading each of the Patriots draft picks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the player, how they contribute, and basically the overall grade I'm going to give that player. And then at the end of this video, I'm going to give a grade for the Patriots draft in a whole. So in the first round with pick number 32, the Patriots selected wide receiver Nikhil Harry, and I am going to give this one an A. This is actually a legendary selection. This is extremely special, and I don't think people are giving that enough credit. The Patriots never draft wide receivers, ever, because they are not good at it, and history shows it. Of course, people are going to say in the comments, you ever heard of a Julian Edelman? And yes, I have, but you don't see that happening. That is a once in a lifetime type of thing. The Patriots, every other time when you look at the history of drafting wide receivers, has not been good. Bill Belichick has also never drafted a wide receiver in the first round of a draft ever while he has been a coach in the NFL. This year, he broke that rule and he did it. And you have to see something very special in a player because, guys, Bill Belichick is not the type of coach that drafts just because. He doesn't necessarily draft on needs, and you see that he will only pick a player if he sees good value, if he sees him honestly and truthfully contributing to the team. And for Bill Belichick to select someone in the first round, he obviously has something very high on them. He's highly praising them. And the fact that he finally broke bank and decided to take a wide receiver in the first round for the first time ever truly says something. But he is a very versatile guy. He's actually was regarded, even before the Patriots picked him, as one of the best wide receivers in this draft class, arguably actually one of the best. So it was a very big surprise that he dropped as low as he did. It was actually said by the Cardinals that if the Patriots did not pick him at 32, then in the next round, the second round, the Cardinals were going to select him with the first pick in the second round. So the Patriots would not have been able to get Nikhil Harry if they didn't get him in the 32nd. In fact, every other team except the Cardinals would not have been able to get him. He's another guy that will bring height to the wide receiver group, 6'2", so he brings some nice height, isn't anything too crazy. He isn't like a walking wide receiver in a tight end body. But he brings height. He's able to play the outside, which I think a lot of Patriots fans will like. It's something that the Patriots need, a tall guy to be able to play on the outside, but he also is able to play in the slot. He's very good also at working his way in the middle of the field. So really, wherever you place him, he can be put. I've also seen him in college be used on those sweeps. So basically what the Patriots were doing last year with Cordero Patterson is something they will do with a Nikhil Harry. And I think a big thing they were doing here, a big thing that they liked in him, is his ability to come down with those 50-50 balls. He is a very strong guy. He has very nice, good, capable, strong hands. What he is praised for is going up in the air and catching these 50-50 balls. And that is something we saw mostly with Gronkowski. Now, Nikhil Harry really and truly should be a downfield threat for the Patriots. He has the full ability to be able to do so, and the Patriots have truly not actually had that deep threat. If you're looking at wide receiver, then really since of Brandon Cooks, but in general, the Patriots have not really had that in recently since a Rob Gronkowski. That's what Rob Gronkowski really was for the Patriots. Even last year with the shell that he was of himself, he was the downfield threat for the Patriots. There really was no other receiver that was a downfield threat for the Patriots other than Rob Gronkowski. And Gronk has always been known for being able to go up and make contested catches, going up and getting 50-50 balls, BT 12 being able to just launch the ball up and just relying on Gronk to be able to come down with it. Basically, that is what Nikhil Harry is going to be. He can bring a nice red zone threat also to the Patriots, something they've also lacked, that is in that red zone area. He can really help make sure that they do not just settle for 3 points. Again, he brings the height to be able to make some plays. And he's also very special, again, with catching those tough balls, those 50-50 balls. He's highly praised for it. He's a very tough guy to go up against, especially in man coverage. And if you are putting an undersized corner or safety on him, it is going to be very tough to cover someone like Nikhil Harry. What I also like about him is that maybe not right away, but with some time, we could also see defenses trying to put some double teams on him. Obviously, that then means you cannot double team guys like Julian Edelman, Ben Watson, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, guys like that. He's also very good in the run game, and that's something the Patriots need. They're trying to establish this run game, and a lot of times we just look at offensive line and we just look at tight ends when we're looking at blocking for the run game. But a big thing in that also comes with wide receivers. Patriots lost Chris Hogan. He was a very good run blocker. Obviously, they needed to replace him, and that is exactly what they're getting. Nikhil Harry is not scared to get in the run game, not scared to be rough, and is also very good at it. Now, the last thing I will say about Nikhil Harry is that he is very good in that yards after catch. Brady can throw a short dump off to him, and it can turn into an easy 60-yard touchdown, even though it was just a 3-yard completion pass. So again, that goes back to just his versatility. He's able to be a downfield threat, but he can also create yards after the catch. He can stiff arm, he can juke, he can really work his way around, because once you get the ball in Nikhil Harry's hands, it is actually said, and I quote, that he has a running back vision after he catches the ball. Great pickup in a need of area for the Patriots, one of the biggest needs they had this offseason, so definitely an A for me. Next up, in the second round, the New England Patriots selected Juan Williams, cornerback. And honestly, I'm surprised that the Patriots got this guy with the 45th pick, but at the same time, there was a lot of guys that were dropping. Greedy Williams dropped, surprisingly, so at the same time, I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. I'm going to give this signing an A-. A lot of people were not very high on this. I was honestly confused myself when the Patriots drafted a cornerback in the second round, when there were so many more needs, when there were still other tight ends on the board that they could get. But after letting it sink in, after thinking about it, after reading up on him, I would not have wanted to have it any other way. This was a guy that the Patriots were bringing in pre-draft. They really, really, really liked him. I cannot stress how much they really did like him. And believe it or not, they actually viewed him as a first-round talent. They were talking about actually selecting him over a Nikhil Harry. Ultimately, they didn't. Ultimately, I'm very glad that they didn't, as they got Nikhil Harry in the first, and then the pick after that, they ended up getting him. But I think what also shows that the Patriots really did like him is that they traded up in order to get him. He's a 6'4" defender, and that in itself is a lot to make you excited. He's a guy that is able to cover really any offensive weapon. He can cover wide receivers. More notably, he can cover tight ends, which is something the Patriots have had some issues with. Really, the guy who does that is Patrick Chung. Obviously, Patrick Chung is, 1, getting older, and 2, coming off an entire broken arm. Devin McCourty is also getting a lot older. We're hearing that this could possibly be his last season in the NFL. He's also getting older, but is not very good against covering tight ends anyway. He's also able to cover running backs out of the backfield, which could really help the Patriots. Now and then the Patriots struggle in that section. They can line him up in that linebacker area if need be. But because of his height, there really isn't a guy that he can't cover. I mean, if you are going to put a smaller wide receiver on a guy like Juwan Williams is just going to bully the heck out of him. He's really praised for his ability to play both man coverage and zone coverage. Now, if you're a Patriots fan, then you know that the New England Patriots, about 80% of the time, like to play old-fashioned man coverage. Now, they definitely do put some zone in there, and so that is good that he's able to play both man and zone. He does excel more in man, which obviously is good, as that's what the Patriots mainly are doing. But he's also really praised for his ability to be a press cornerback. He really is the definition of a press cornerback, really is on the tail ends of these wide receiver, tight end, halfbacks, is right up against them and can really shut them down. So again, that goes back to if you're going to put a smaller guy on him, which is more likely going to happen because there's not too many guys that are 6 foot or over in the NFL. So putting smaller guys on him, especially guys who are smaller than 6 foot, are going to have a terribly hard time going up against him. And this is something that is going to keep offensive coordinators up at night. Now, he does have some issues being a bit inconsistent, has let up a bit too many big plays. So you could make the argument of a B plus, A minus, but I'm going to stick with the A minus strictly because I think Bill Belichick, honest to God, sees something very high in this guy and that they can easily work this out. He isn't a guy that should have to come in and be a day one starter. Again, the Patriots have a lot of depth in this secondary. They have a great secondary right now, both at cornerback. Not too much at safety, but they have enough at safety to be able to get past. I think this guy is more of someone who will serve as a depth position. Maybe you'll see him in the rotation now and then, but mainly a guy that Bill Belichick will try to develop over time to become a starter, whether that is, playing corner or whether that's playing safety to be able to replace a Patrick Chung or Devin McCourty in the future and be able to switch him more into that safety role. Next up, in the third round, pick number 77, the Patriots selected edge rusher Chase Winovich, and straight up, I'm giving this one an A+. The Patriots had a steal in the third round. They actually had two, but we'll get into that later. But for the first one, the Patriots got someone of a Chase Winovich caliber in the third round. It's just unbelievable that he fell that far down, and the Patriots are getting one of the top-notch defensive ends while getting him in the third round. Winovich was actually projected by a lot of people to go into the first round, yet somehow dropped to the third. He's better than even a lot of guys that went in the first. He's more talented than guys like Rashawn Gary, someone who went in the first. Better than other guys who went even in the second. So again, Patriots getting a steal. Obviously, after the departure of a Trey Flowers, the Patriots really needed to establish this defensive line. Even if Flowers didn't leave, the Patriots needed to establish this defensive line. They did go in and they did trade for a Michael Bennett. Do not get me wrong, that obviously helps tremendously, but with the Trey Flowers, you were getting a younger guy, a guy that was able to develop, but more importantly, was not just good in one area. The problem is with a lot of the guys the Patriots get is that they are either good in one area, as in good in rushing the passer or good in stopping the run, but not a combination of both. That's something Trey Flowers did really well. Again, obviously they replaced that with a Michael Bennett, a literally top 3 defensive end in the league. But they are getting the same thing out of someone like a Chase Winovich. He's a freak athlete with an insane motor, something that the Patriots really needed to this, to the team in general, but especially to this defense, really get it amped up. He is a bit undersized. He's considered at least at 6'3", 255 pounds, but that really has not put him behind. Patriots will now be getting a young guy that they can develop over time and don't have to worry about him leaving the NFL in a few years because he's getting older. He's really, really good at applying pressure, getting to the quarterback. The thing is going to be with him is the amount of snaps he gets. He does apply pressure on a consistent basis. I think that's what I really like about him, is that he is a consistent guy. But because he is a rookie, I could really see the Patriots starting him off in the rotation, seeing how he does, and then amplifying his amount of snaps as time goes on. What I would praise even more about Chase Winovich is his ability to stop the run. Now, when I say that, I'm not trying to take away his ability to pass rush by any means. I'm not trying to say he's mediocre at it by any means, but he is so good at stopping the run. It's unbelievable. I mean, you look at his stats last season, having 15.5 tackles for loss. The season before that, 19 tackles for loss. Season before that, 5. And that's all in him playing just 13 games in a season. That's it. Keep in mind, you're going to the NFL where he's going to be playing even more than that and could even get his snaps amplified depending on how he does. But the Patriots have had a lot of issues in stopping the run in the past. We have seen it time after time after time. You even saw it last year, but it's just a consistent problem that the Patriots have. They have an elite secondary to be able to stop the pass. Now it is going to be able to stop the run. If they can do that, they're going to be one of the best defense, if not the best defense in the league. They're going to be a shutdown defense. And keep in mind, guys, this season we are going to be going up against some of the best running backs in the NFL. You have Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott. We're going to be facing Le'Veon Bell twice a year now. Not to mention you have Lamar Jackson, who is a running back of a quarterback. So just so many more running backs that the Patriots are going to be going up against, that they're going to have to stop the run. They're going to have to establish run stopping in order to win the games, and I cannot stress that enough. Chase Winovich is going to be really good at that. Something Michael Bennett is also extremely good in is jumping the snap and being able to stop the run. You have Chase Winovich on one side, Michael Bennett on the other, and I just love what the Patriots are building right here. Winovich is also playing with a chip on his shoulder. If you want to know exactly what the chip on his shoulder is, go check out my video that I made on him. But in a nutshell, one of the things is that obviously he was selected in the 3rd round. He's visibly better than a guy who was supposed to go in the 3rd round, but has a lot going for him. Again, high intensity, high motor. And we've seen what that chip on your shoulder can do to guys coming in the NFL. Cue in a guy like a Tom Brady and a Julian Edelman, and it can really just vamp your mentality and really produce on the field for you. So moving on, in the 3rd round with pick number 87, the New England Patriots select running back Damien Harris. I was very confused when I saw this one. I really didn't think the Patriots needed that. This was one of the biggest positions that they had extreme depth in. I didn't really see the need for it. But I'm actually going to give this one a B+, because after reading up on it, it makes a good amount of sense. Like, as of right now, you have Sony Michel, James White, Rex Burkhead, Brandon Bolden, and now Damien Harris. I don't see the Patriots carrying that many running backs on the team. I mean, they could, especially after the issues that they faced this past season with staying healthy. There was a point where the Patriots were using Cordero Patterson at running back. But I don't necessarily see that happening. A lot of people say, well, Brandon Bolden would be the odd man out, not a Rex Burkhead. But the Patriots had a lot of issues when it came to special teams. Brandon Bolden is very good at his special teams. I just don't see him being the guy that gets cut. He is very similar to a Rex Burkhead. They are the exact same height, and they are just a 1 pound difference. They have a really similar playing style, except a Damien Harris is 1 younger, 2 carries the ball better, and 3 does not have an injury history, unlike Rex Burkhead, who comes in year after year missing like easily half the season. This is easily another steal for the Patriots. Some people actually consider this more of a steal than a Chase Winovich. Some people, I've even heard NFL analysis regarding this as the steal of the 2019 draft. For all the teams that were looking for running backs, even a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, I am surprised they did not get a guy like Damien Harris. He was one of the better running backs in the draft class, and he's going to serve a very interesting role for the Patriots. He's going to be that power runner for the Patriots, that power back that the Patriots have really been trying to look for. I won't be surprised to see him doing a lot more goal line back. The Patriots really like to do that with Sony Michel, and I think they will continue to do it with Sony Michel, but I think you're going to see a Damien Harris being in there a lot more. Next up, in the 3rd round, the Patriots selected with the 101st pick, offensive tackle Yannick Just. Now, I like this move. I actually like this move a good amount. And I'm going to give this one an A-. We all knew that the Patriots were going to add some type of offensive tackle because of the departure of Trent Brown in free agency. Obviously, the Patriots needed some help. They also lost long-term backup Adrian Waddle to the Buffalo Bills. So they lost, ultimately, 2 starting offensive tackles in one offseason. You then have Isaiah Wynn, the former first-round pick of the 2018 draft, who the Patriots selected with the pick they got when they traded Brandon Cooks. But as we all know, he had an injury with his Achilles in the preseason, just a couple snaps into his first game, and he ended up being out the entire season. So we don't really know exactly where he is at this time. He could be ready for the season. We're also hearing some talk that he might not be ready for the start of the regular season. Patriots have this offseason really tried their best, really done a lot of stuff to establish this offensive line. And that's just something they do. They like to do it when there is even the smallest hole in their offensive line. They did it last year, and they're doing it again this year. Yannick, I don't necessarily think is going to come in year one and become a starter. He is more of a project, but he was one of the more top-tier offensive tackles in this year's draft. He was actually graded as better than some of the guys that even went before him, and I actually, with all of the mock drafts that I watched in order to get ready for the draft, in order to talk more about the Patriots and their draft, to make my own Patriots mock draft, I watched a lot of mock drafts, and I saw Yannick going a lot in the second and third rounds. He is also a guy that is dealing with a little bit of injuries. That's why he was not at rookie minicamp. That's why he may or may not be there for OTAs, but he should be ready and good to go for training camp. He's a young guy at just 23 years old, so he has time in order to develop. He has a decent build also. He's 6'5", 322 pounds. Obviously, it's not necessarily what the Patriots have had in the past few years in someone like a Jared Veldheer, someone who they just recently signed, who I'll talk a little bit about actually in a second, but more also in a Trent Brown, these 6'8" guys. But at the same time also, that is just 1 inch shorter than Marcus Cannon, who plays right tackle for the Patriots. All in all, the Patriots added really good depth with this guy. He will be a guy who the Patriots can plug in now and then. They can kind of have him come in at times, something they did with Adrian Waddle. Even though he wasn't necessarily starting unless there was an injury, the Patriots would have him come in certain offensive packages, and that's something they could do with him, get him kind of warmed up to the NFL, work with him, work on his mechanics. Really with him, that's just a big thing. A lot of his issues come mechanic-wise and just issues with staying healthy. Because the Patriots signed Jared Veldheer, a veteran offensive tackle who is a monster, 6'8", very similar to a Trent Brown. If Isaiah Wynn is not ready to go, because Dante Scarnecchia did say that that is their man, that is their left tackle, then Veldheer, my thought would be that he would be that backup. Ultimately, though, Dante Scarnecchia said himself, nothing is set in stone. You will go into training camp, you will go into these off-season programs, and everyone will fight for their spot. But another thing we might see him do is we could see him as the team's, like I said, the swing tackle, something that Nate Soldier did, the Patriots' former first-round pick. He had to do the same thing. Either way, getting a guy like Yannick at 101 overall is very good. And honestly, what I see them doing, I think what they should do is have him get healthy, have him learn the NFL, have him come in certain packages. But ultimately, I think what we could see him do is replace Marcus Cannon at some point. Next up, in the 4th round, with pick number 118, the Patriots selected offensive lineman Hjalte Froholdt. And I say offensive lineman because he has the ability to play center and guard. Now, when I'm looking at him more as is a guard, I don't see him playing center. The Patriots are perfectly fine with David Andrews, so I don't really see him having the need. But he has the ability to if need be. He's another guy I don't see coming in year one and being a starter. I really like him though. He is an excellent pass protector. And because of his ability to be such a good pass protector and a couple of other things I'm going to talk about in a second, I give this signing an A-, especially for it being in the 4th round. But he's a really good pass protector. That's something that is really important, especially for keeping somebody like Tom Brady protected. He's getting older, needs to be protected. But even if we're talking about a guy like Jade Stidham, the next guy we're going to talk about of the Patriots draft picks, even if it was him and not Tom Brady behind the ball, I would still say it is very important in order to keep the quarterback up, give him more time to throw the ball, and make some plays. Now, he does have to work on some stuff. Again, another guy that it's just mechanical, more so wise on his hand placements, just kind of like with a Yanni could just. He will need to develop more in the run game. He isn't bad in the run game. He isn't like trash, and it's not something you have to look at him and worry about. But it is something in his game that will need to improve. He's a guy that will definitely serve as more of the backup guard position, whether that is for Shaq Mason or Joe Thuney, and he'll definitely be competing more with a Ted Karras for that backup position. But I think the biggest reason that the Patriots drafted him was that Patriots offensive guard, their left guard, and Joe Thuney is a free agent at the end of this season. So he is in contract year. From what it sounds like, the Patriots will not approach him on a contract until after the season, and that's a very deadly thing because there are teams that are going to pay Joe Thuney a lot more than the Patriots are going to. So I don't see Joe Thuney coming back, and I think that's what the Patriots are doing now. They are replacing Joe Thuney right now, and they're doing it in an excellent way, doing it in a year where they can keep Joe Thuney but have the guy develop for a year and come in his second year in the NFL and plug in as the starting role as long as everything goes to plan. Something else I really like about him is that he has had a very good amount of experience with a bunch of different college players, more specifically the Jets, I believe, third-round pick in defensive tackle Quinnen Williams. Now, he did really well, remarkably well against someone like Quinnen Williams, keeping him back, keeping him away from the quarterback, and really just shutting him down. And that's going to be very important as obviously the Patriots play the Jets twice a year. So next up, in the fourth round, pick number 133, the Patriots selected quarterback Jade Stidham, and I'm going to give this one a B. When the Patriots had drafted Jade Stidham, I'll be honest, in my draft video, I wasn't super high on him, but after letting it sink in, after watching even more film on him, reading up on him, watching videos on him, I do like this signing a lot more than I previously did, but I'm definitely not as high, I think, as some Patriots fans are. Now, I think one of the begging questions that a lot of people want me to answer right now is Jade Stidham Tom Brady's replacement? Is he the future? And I'm not going to say that in this video because I'm going to dedicate another entire video to Jade Stidham where I will be answering some of those types of questions. But what the Patriots got on their hands really is a developmental quarterback. He's not a guy that you would plug in year one, but at the same time, they don't need to plug him in year one because you got Tom Brady behind the ball. Interestingly enough, a lot of NFL analysts, they were surprised that he dropped to the fourth round. They actually had him way higher than a lot of the other quarterbacks that were taken, second, first, even third round. Now, Jade Stidham really fell off the charts because of his 2018 season. In 2017, he was just insane. He was a top-notch quarterback. He was making really great plays. And it was actually said that if he had the same caliber season, or say 2017 was his last season, then he would have been a guy that you're talking about easily going in the first round. But because of this season and the dump off that he had in 2018, he dropped tremendously. And what a lot of people do not understand about that is that the college he went to had a terrible offensive line, had literally no receivers, and that went back on him. He made good throws. He put the ball where the ball needed to go. The problem is that the receivers would be dropping the ball, whether that was the running back, the wide receiver, the tight end. He would get the ball to them, and they would then drop the ball, which results back on his stats. I think something that the Patriots really like about him, though, is that he's a very smart quarterback. He's serious about his play. He is smart, just like the Patriots liked in someone like Danny Etling. Jade Stidham is without a doubt more talented than Danny Etling. You can't even make the comparison. But the Patriots really drafted Danny Etling because they liked how smart he was and how safe he was with the football. And that's essentially the same thing you are getting with Jade Stidham plus a lot more talent-wise. He's really praised for his natural style of throwing. He's also praised for being very physical. He's a very physical quarterback. He's able to move around in the pocket, able to make a lot of throws. Something I'm worried about is his accuracy. I've heard a lot of different and mixed feelings on his accuracy, but he can also scramble and make some plays with his feet. All in all, I am very curious to see him during the offseason, see how he does, because in 2017, when he had a decent offensive line and some guys to throw to, he had a very good season. You're now coming into with the New England Patriots, where you'll be learning under Tom Brady. You have the best coaching staff, in guys like Bill Belichick and the rest of the Patriots coaching staff. And the Patriots will also be providing you more top-notch receivers, guys who will without a doubt catch the ball. So extremely excited to see how Jade Stidham kind of starts to play out for the Patriots. He really just gets a B for me, though, because there is a lot of things to be worried about. In the end, he really did fall off in 2018. We can make the argument that it was because of his surroundings, but still, he did have a fall off. And again, his accuracy has some issues and some concerns, but for the 4th round to get him, it was an excellent pick. In the 5th round, pick number 159, the Patriots select defensive lineman Byron Coward, and I'm going to give this one a C. I've seen Byron Coward at different positions. I've heard him at the defensive end. I've also heard him at defensive tackle. So really just going to be where the Patriots like to have him. But Byron Coward is the type of player that has literally not recorded any stats. This past season, he had a better season than every other year he had in college. He actually had 2 interceptions. I think that is the most interesting thing about him. If it wasn't for those 2 interceptions, I would be grading this even lower. But his stats don't show him being able to stop the run. His stats don't show him being able to get to the quarterback. And I am one to say openly that stats do not necessarily predict how a player does or how they are going to do. It doesn't, but when his stats throughout the few years, he hasn't even resulted in 5 sacks at the maximum, it's concerning. He was a beast in high school. Going into college, a lot of people had this guy extremely hyped up, but he just did not have the success as so many people anticipated. In his first season, he got just straight buried in his college team's defensive line. You didn't see him. He wasn't making plays. He was kind of just on the field. But then in his senior year, he finally did switch to a different college where he did show more of an upside, did show more of a potential, didn't go off by any means, but he did show some potential and some things that are able to be worked with. I get even more concerned when you are now going into the NFL, and if you went from high school to college and you had issue transitioning, you had not productive time in college because you had so much trouble, you are now going from college to the NFL, which is much, much, much more harder. So how is he then going to still do? He does have a good build. He is a bigger guy. He's a guy that you would think would be able to do more because of his build, but ultimately has not. Obviously, again, he's going to the Patriots. Patriots get the best out of their players. But I just believe that for a 5th round pick, the Patriots could have gotten someone a little bit better. Next up in the 5th round, pick number 163, the Patriots select Jake Bailey, punter out of Stanford. And I'm going to give this one a B-. A lot of people didn't like this. And I mean, obviously, when you're getting a punter in the 5th round, you're going to have some pretty high expectations. The Patriots actually traded up in the draft in order to get this guy, which is interesting. I think it says a lot that they traded up in order to get a punter. But the main thing here is what happens with Brian Allen. Ryan Allen was a free agent. The Patriots finally get him re-signed, but just to a 1-year deal. And when the Patriots re-signed him, and I made a video on that, I told you guys that I don't see him sticking around for too long. The Patriots signed him to a 1-year deal. Obviously, that's for a reason. Punters are not like wide receivers. They are not like kickers. They're not like running backs, defensive linemen, quarterbacks. They don't have this huge market. They do not have this trade value of sorts. So with Ryan Allen, I didn't see it pictured as he had this huge market or he was demanding a lot of money. I truly saw it more as the Patriots are the ones kind of moving on from him. What I think is also something to note is that Jake Bailey is a right-footed punter, and that is the first time that has happened in recent memory. The Patriots, more specifically Bill Belichick, loves their left-footed punters because the ball spins the opposite way. Then the punt returners have issues actually catching the ball and fielding it. But yeah, Bill Belichick went with the right-footed punter, but ultimately he's going to be adding, again, competition for Ryan Allen. As we all know, the Patriots brought in competition to the punting position last offseason in Corey Bahojaquez for Ryan Allen. As we all know, Ryan Allen ended up winning the battle. He stayed with the Patriots. Patriots released Corey Bahojaquez, and he went and got signed by the Bills. So for anyone saying maybe the Patriots release a punter, because I do not see the Patriots keeping 2 punters on the team. I don't. It does not make sense for them to keep 2 punters. But at the same time, I don't see the Patriots wasting a 5th round pick, that's still fairly high, and then just releasing the punter later on. I also am not 100% certain, I'm not fairly confident at all that Jake Bailey would be able to be reverted and make it back to the Patriots practice squad if he was released. I think a team would go and grab him. Ultimately, the difference between Jake Bailey and Ryan Allen is that Jake Bailey is younger, obviously. The Patriots are going to get him on a 4-year low contract, but also he has a booming leg. I remember hearing when reading about him that he had this one punt that went for over 80 yards. So he has just an amazing leg. He's able to do a lot. He's a pretty dang athletic guy, for a punter. But something he needs to work on is his accuracy. Knowing where to put the ball. He isn't bad at that, but he definitely needs a lot of work, especially when you compare to Ryan Allen, a guy who literally can put the ball wherever it needs to be, and that's why Bill Belichick has really liked him. That's why he's been on the Patriots for such a consistently long time, is that he does not have the biggest leg. If we're going to be honest, he doesn't. He does not have the best leg when it comes to hang time, and I think that's another thing with Jake Bailey that the Patriots would be getting more of, is a guy with better hang time in the air with the ball. But Ryan Allen is just very good at putting the ball where it needs to be, although he does not have the booming leg to get the ball necessarily down the field or up in the air as much as the Patriots would like. And lastly, I have the Patriots in the 7th round with pick number 252 selecting cornerback Ken Webster. I'm going to give this one a C. I'm not crazy about it. Some of you guys were, but I'm just not. He is a small cornerback, 5'10", is not going to bring anything height-wise. He's decently fast, ran a 4.4 in the 40-yard dash, so he's not crazy fast. He is not Jonathan Jones, but he isn't super slow. What I think the Patriots like best about him is that Webster is a freakish athlete, but he has not quite matched up to his measurables. Ultimately, he's coming already into an very, very in-depth secondary, especially at cornerback. But the Patriots can pull the best out of him. They've developed guys like Jonathan Jones and started to develop guys like Keon Crossan, who both at least started on special teams and even got defensive snaps and play time. But why I don't see him making the roster is really because he is an exact replica of a guy like a Keon Crossan, and I don't see why the Patriots would keep both. Obviously, Keon Crossan is going to be the better guy because he has really shown up in certain times defensively, but also has a year under his belt, which is going to be much more than Ken Webster does. But that is it for today's video. That is me grading the Patriots draft. In all, what I give the Patriots for their draft as a whole is going to be an A. They got a lot of steals. I mean, even for a team to get one steal in the draft is amazing, but the Patriots got 2 at least. I mean, you can even make the argument that they got 3 or 4, but you can without a doubt say that they got 2 steals. They addressed needs that they have both now and for the future, and they got some picks for next year. Great draft. Really like how they did this year. Reason I don't give them an A+ though is because of a guy like a Ken Webster. Obviously in the 7th round you can't expect too much, but getting a guy exactly like a Keon Crossan, but mostly because of selecting a Byron Coward in the 5th round. I'm just iffy about that one, but let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, make sure you guys like and subscribe. It helps me, the channel, even you guys out very, very, very much. Make sure you guys share this video with everybody who knows from the Patriots Global family. And other than that, I will catch you guys in another video.